I thought my wedding ring was perfect until I noticed the scratches. Logan barely looked at it and said, "It's just the finish." I wanted to believe him. But a few weeks later, a woman at the jewelry store turned the band under the light and said, "This was resized before." That was the moment. When I found the photo later that night, same ring, different hand, I realized the truth had been sitting in my closet the whole time. The first time Logan slid the ring onto my finger, I didn't question anything. It felt right. That's the only way I can explain it. Not perfect in a flashy way, just right. Clean design, nothing too big, nothing attention-seeking. Exactly the kind of ring I would have picked for myself if I had gone looking. I remember laughing a little and asking him how he got the size so accurate. I hadn't told him. I hadn't even hinted. He smiled like it was nothing and said, "I pay attention." And at the time, that answer meant everything to me. It made me feel seen. Looking back now, I think that was the moment I decided to trust him completely. Not because of the ring itself, but because of what I thought it represented. We didn't rush into the wedding, but we didn't drag it out either. It was about 8 months after the engagement. Just enough time to plan something simple. We got married in a small venue just outside Boise. Nothing big. No dramatic decorations, no over-the-top speeches. Just close friends, a few family members, and a quiet ceremony that felt more real than anything else I'd imagined growing up. I remember standing there thinking, this is enough. This is what stability feels like. Logan wasn't the kind of person who overwhelmed you with emotion. He didn't make grand gestures or say things just to fill silence. But he was consistent. He showed up. He did what he said he would do. That mattered more to me than anything loud or dramatic. After the wedding, everything settled into something that felt easy. We moved into an apartment on the quieter side of Boise. Not far from downtown, but far enough that nights were still quiet. The kind of place where you could hear your own thoughts if you sat still long enough. I worked mostly from home. Content strategy projects, deadlines that came in waves. Some days I barely left the couch. Other days I'd take my laptop to a small cafe a few blocks away just to feel like I was part of the world again. Logan had a more structured routine. Office hours, consistent schedule. He liked things predictable. He liked systems. It made sense for him. And it worked for us. That's why it took me so long to question anything. Because nothing else felt wrong. There weren't late-night disappearances or suspicious phone calls. He didn't hide his screen or act distant. If anything, he was exactly the same person I married. Calm. Reliable. Present. Which made what I noticed feel small. Insignificant. The scratches on the ring weren't obvious at first. I think I noticed them maybe 2 or 3 weeks after the wedding. I was sitting on the couch, laptop closed for once, just staring at my hand without really thinking about it. The light from the lamp hit the band at an angle, and something about it looked uneven. I turned my hand slightly, then again. That's when I saw them. Faint lines across the metal. Not deep enough to catch your nail on, but visible if you looked closely. Like the surface had been worn down in tiny, consistent places. My first thought was that I did it. I'm not careful with jewelry. I forget to take things off. I bump into counters, scrape against doors, drop things. It made sense that I'd mark it up without realizing. So I didn't think much of it. But over the next few days, I kept noticing it. Not just the scratches, but the pattern. They didn't look random. That's what stuck with me. If I had caused them, they'd be scattered. Messy. Uneven. These weren't like that. They followed a kind of rhythm. Subtle, but consistent. Like they had been there longer than I had been wearing it. I remember one night, sitting in the same spot on the couch, turning the ring slowly under the light again. Trying to convince myself it was nothing. It's just where I muttered under my breath. You're overthinking it. And maybe I was. Because everything else felt fine. Logan was still the same. He came home at the same time every day, set his keys down in the same place, asked me the same small questions about my day. Busy? Not too bad. Eat yet? Yeah. It was simple. Comfortable. There was no tension. No weird distance. No reason for me to feel like something was off. Which is probably why I didn't bring it up right away. I let it sit in the back of my mind. Ignored it. Until I couldn't anymore. It was a small moment when I finally asked him. We were in the kitchen. Nothing dramatic. I was rinsing a glass. He was leaning against the counter scrolling through something on his phone. I tried to keep my voice casual. Hey, this might sound weird, I said, holding my hand up slightly, but my ring looks kinda used. Did the jeweler mess something up or something? He didn't even pause. Didn't hesitate. Didn't look closely. He just glanced at it and gave a small, almost amused smile. It's just the finish, he said. Some rings are like that. Vintage style. That was it. Simple. Clean. No confusion, no uncertainty. And, because of that, I believed him. Or at least, I accepted it. Because the explanation made sense on the surface. I didn't know enough about jewelry to argue it. And nothing in his tone suggested he was brushing me off. So I dropped it. I went back to work. Back to normal. But something about that moment didn't settle the way I expected it to. It didn't go away. It just got quieter. Like a thought sitting just out of reach, waiting for the right moment to come back. Weeks passed. Life stayed the same. And then one afternoon, I decided to get the ring cleaned. There wasn't a specific reason. It just felt like something I should do. Routine maintenance. Something normal people did with something that important. The jewelry store was a small boutique downtown. Quiet, warm lighting, glass displays that made everything look more expensive than it probably was. A woman named Diana greeted me. She had that calm, practiced way of speaking, like she'd had the same conversations 100 times, but still paid attention. I handed her the ring without thinking too much about it. Just a cleaning, I said. She nodded, took it carefully, and walked over to the counter with better lighting. At first, everything felt normal. She looked at it, turned it slightly, checked the stone. Then she paused. It wasn't dramatic. If I hadn't been watching her, I probably wouldn't have noticed. But she looked at it just a little longer than expected. Then she ran her finger along the inside of the band. Has this been resized before? She asked. My stomach dropped. I didn't react right away. I just kind of laughed, like the question didn't mean anything. I don't think so, I said. Maybe before we bought it? She hesitated. Not in a suspicious way. More like she was deciding how much to say. Then she tilted the ring slightly and pointed to a faint line along the inside. See this? She said gently. That usually means it's been adjusted. Happens when it's sized for a different finger. I stared at it. I hadn't noticed that line before. Or maybe I had, and just didn't understand what it meant. Oh, I said quietly. I guess, maybe it was a display piece or something. She gave a small, polite smile. Sometimes, she said. But usually that means it's been owned before. She didn't push it further. She didn't need to. Because something in my chest had already shifted. I nodded, pretended it wasn't a big deal, let her finish cleaning it. But the entire time, my mind kept circling the same thought. Owned before. When I left the store, the ring looked exactly the same. Clean. Polished. Perfect. Except now I couldn't unsee it. The scratches. The line inside the band. The way Logan hadn't even looked twice when I asked about it. I got into my car and just sat there for a minute. Trying to make sense of it. There were explanations. There had to be. Maybe it was returned. Maybe it was discounted. Maybe he didn't think it mattered. But none of those explanations felt complete. And that was the problem. Because if it didn't matter, why didn't he just say that? I drove home with that question sitting quietly in the back of my mind. And for the first time since we got married, something about my life didn't feel as stable as I thought it was. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't say anything at all. But something had already started shifting. And I could feel it. I didn't say anything when I got home. Logan was already there, sitting at the kitchen counter with his laptop open, the same way he always did. Shoes off, sleeves rolled up, everything in its place like it always was. Hey, he said without looking up. Hey. I set my bag down, slipped my shoes off, and walked past him like nothing had changed. Like I hadn't just sat in my car for 10 minutes trying to figure out why my wedding ring suddenly felt unfamiliar. He didn't notice anything. Or if he did, he didn't say it. That was the thing about Logan. He didn't push. He didn't ask questions unless something was obvious. He just let things be. Most of the time, I appreciated that. That night, it made everything feel worse. I kept my voice normal. Asked him about his day. Listened to his answer. Nodded in the right places. Made dinner like I always did. But my mind kept replaying the same sentence. Usually that means it's been owned before. Owned before. I kept looking at the ring without meaning to. Turning it slightly when he wasn't paying attention, like I was trying to catch it doing something wrong. It didn't. It just sat there, quiet and perfect, like it had nothing to explain. Logan didn't mention it. Didn't ask why I had gone to the jewelry store. Didn't ask anything at all. And that was when the thought started forming. If it didn't matter, why didn't he just tell me? I went to bed that night still holding on to that question. And I didn't sleep. Not really. I kept going back and forth in my head, trying to force it into something small. Maybe it was a returned ring. Maybe someone bought it, didn't like it, brought it back. Maybe the jeweler resized it before putting it back on display. That happens, right? People return things all the time. But then another thought would push through. If that was the case, why didn't Logan just say that? Why vintage finish? Why not something simple and true? I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, listening to the quiet rhythm of his breathing next to me. He slept fine. Of course he did. The next morning felt normal on the surface. Coffee. Emails. The low hum of my laptop as I tried to focus on work. But everything underneath it felt off. Like I was slightly out of sync with my own life. I kept telling myself to let it go. It's a ring. It doesn't change anything. But the more I tried to push it away, the more it came back. Until I realized something I didn't want to admit. I wasn't going to let it go. Not without knowing. I don't go through people's things. I've never been that person. I've always believed that if you feel the need to snoop, something is already broken. And I didn't want to be the kind of person who broke things just to prove a point. But this didn't feel like that. This felt like something that already existed, and I just hadn't seen it yet. So I waited. Not for a plan. Just for an opportunity. It came a few days later. Logan had a late meeting. He told me in the morning, same calm tone as always. Probably won't be home until after 8, he said, grabbing his keys. Okay, I replied, like it didn't matter. The second the door closed behind him, the apartment felt different. Quieter. Not peaceful. Just empty in a way that made everything feel louder. I told myself I wasn't going to do it. I opened my laptop. Tried to work. Tried to focus on anything else. But I couldn't. Because the thought was already there. And it wasn't going anywhere. So I closed my laptop. Stood up. And walked into the bedroom. The closet wasn't messy. Logan kept his things organized. Boxes stacked neatly, old stuff pushed to the back, nothing chaotic. That made it easier somehow. Like I wasn't digging through anything personal. Just looking. I started with the obvious places. Top shelves. Old bags. Storage boxes that hadn't been touched in months. Most of it was exactly what you'd expect. Old cables. Papers. Random things people keep just in case they need them someday. Nothing that explained anything. For a second, I almost stopped. I remember thinking, this is stupid. You're making something out of nothing. But then I saw it. A smaller box, tucked behind a larger one. Not hidden exactly, just not in plain view. I pulled it forward and opened it. Inside was an old phone. Not broken. Just old. The kind people keep when they upgrade but never throw away. I picked it up, turned it over in my hand. My heart was already beating faster. I didn't know why. It might not even have anything on it. It might just be a phone. I pressed the power button. Nothing. Of course. I found a charger in the same box, plugged it in and waited. The screen flickered to life after a minute. Still working. That alone made something in my chest tighten. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a passcode I couldn't get through. Maybe nothing at all. But when the screen lit up fully, it didn't ask for anything. No passcode. No lock. Just the home screen. And that was when I realized something. He never expected anyone to look. My hands felt cold as I opened the photos. At first, it was nothing. Random pictures. Screenshots. Old things that didn't mean anything anymore. But as I scrolled, the timeline shifted. The photos got older. And then, they changed. It wasn't obvious at first. Just a picture of him. Then another. Then one where he was standing next to someone. A woman. I slowed down. Zoomed in slightly. They looked close. Not casual. Not just friends. There was a kind of familiarity there. The way they stood next to each other. The way he was looking at her. I kept scrolling. And then I saw it. A professional photo. Both of them dressed up. Smiling in a way that felt staged, but intentional. The kind of photo people take when they're about to announce something. My chest tightened. Because I knew what it was before I even let myself think it. Engagement photos. There were a few of them. Different angles. Different poses. Same setting. Same expression on his face. The one I thought was only for me. I didn't feel angry. Not yet. Just quiet. Like something inside me had gone still. I kept scrolling. And then I found the one that made everything click into place. It wasn't even centered on him. It was a close-up shot. Her hand. Resting against his chest. And on her finger. The ring. Same band. Same scratches. Same faint line along the inside. I didn't need to compare it. I knew. I just sat there on the floor, staring at the screen. No reaction. No tears. Just that same quiet feeling spreading through me. Because suddenly, everything made sense. The scratches. The resizing. The way he didn't even look at it when I asked. It wasn't new. It wasn't mine. It never had been. And the worst part wasn't even that he had been engaged before. It was that he had taken something meant for someone else. And given it to me like it was original. Like it didn't carry anything with it. Like it didn't matter. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, I locked the phone, put it back exactly where I found it, and stood up. My legs felt a little unsteady, but I forced myself to move normally. Put everything back. Closed the closet. Walked out like nothing had happened. By the time Logan got home that night, I was on the couch again. Same spot. Same position. Like I had been there all day. Hey, he said, setting his keys down. Hey. I looked up at him. And for the first time since I met him, I saw something different. Not in him. In what I knew. And I realized something that didn't sit right no matter how I tried to frame it. He hadn't lied directly. But he also hadn't told me the truth. And somehow, that felt worse. I didn't confront him. Not that night. Not the next day either. I don't even know why, exactly. I had everything I needed. The photos, the proof, The answer to the question that had been sitting in my head since the jewelry store. But instead of saying anything, I just watched him. It sounds strange when I say it out loud now, but that's what it was. Observation. I wanted to see if anything in him would change if I knew the truth. If there was guilt, it would show up somewhere, right? In the way he spoke. The way he looked at me. The way he reacted to the ring. But nothing changed. The next morning, he moved through the kitchen the same way he always did. Coffee first. Then toast. Phone in one hand, mug in the other. Busy day, he asked. Kind of, I said. He nodded, like that was enough, and went back to scrolling. I watched him longer than I usually would. Not obviously. Just enough to notice the details. His expression didn't shift. His tone didn't hesitate. There was no sign that he was carrying anything hidden. And that was the part that unsettled me the most. Because it meant one of two things. Either he genuinely didn't think what he did was wrong, or he had convinced himself it didn't matter. I kept wearing the ring. That was intentional. Part of me wanted to take it off immediately, throw it somewhere, distance myself from it as fast as possible. But I didn't. I left it exactly where it was. On my finger. In plain sight. Because I wanted to see if he would notice. If he would look at it differently now that I knew. But he didn't. Not once. A few days passed like that. Quiet. Controlled. Normal on the surface. But underneath, everything felt heavier. Every small interaction started to feel layered. When he asked me how my day was, I wondered how many other conversations like that he had with her. When he sat next to me on the couch, I wondered if he had done the same thing, in the same way, with someone else before me. Not in a jealous way. Just in a factual way. Like I was piecing together a version of him I hadn't been introduced to. I found myself replaying things he had said in the past. Any mention of relationships always ended the same way. It didn't work out. That was it. No details. No names. No stories. At the time, I respected that. I didn't think it was my place to dig into something that clearly didn't matter anymore. But now, that simplicity felt intentional. Like it wasn't just privacy. It was omission. I almost brought it up once. We were sitting in the living room, the TV on, but neither of us really watching it. I turned my hand slightly, letting the light catch the ring. Hey, I started. He looked over. Yeah. I hesitated. Just for a second. Then I shook my head. Nothing. He studied me for a moment, like he was deciding whether to push. Then he didn't. Okay, he said, and turned back to the screen. And that was it. That was all it took for me to realize something else. He wasn't curious. Not about what I almost said. Not about what I might be thinking. And maybe that was normal for him. But in that moment, it felt like distance. The kind you don't notice until you're already standing inside it. That night, I went to bed earlier than usual. Not because I was tired, but because I didn't want to sit in the same room pretending everything was fine. Logan came in a little later, like he always did. Got into bed without much noise, careful not to disturb me. Night, he said quietly. Night. I stared at the wall long after he fell asleep. The ring felt heavier than it should have. Not physically. Just in meaning. I kept thinking about the photo. Her hand. The way it rested against his chest like it belonged there. The way the ring fit her perfectly. And then I thought about my own hand. Wearing the same thing. Same scratches. Same resizing. Same history. Except I wasn't part of that history. I was after. And I didn't know what that made me. The next morning, I took the ring off. It wasn't a dramatic decision. I didn't throw it. Didn't slam it down or make a point out of it. I just slid it off. Set it on the nightstand. And left it there. It felt strange immediately. My hand felt lighter, but also exposed. Like something was missing, even though I knew exactly why it was gone. Logan noticed. Of course he did. He's not the kind of person who misses details like that. We were in the kitchen again. Same routine. Same quiet rhythm. He glanced at my hand once, then again. You're not wearing your ring, he said. Not accusatory. Just stating it. I know. There was a pause. Why? I kept my voice steady. I just didn't feel like wearing it today. He looked at me for a second longer than usual. Like he was trying to decide if that answer made sense. Then he nodded. Okay. And that was it. No follow-up. No concern. No questions. Just acceptance. And that did something to me. Because I realized in that moment that he wasn't going to ask. He wasn't going to push for answers or try to understand what was behind it. He was just going to accept whatever I gave him at face value. The same way I had accepted his answer about the ring. It's just the finish. It mirrored back in a way I didn't expect. Later that afternoon, I found myself back in the bedroom. Standing in front of the nightstand, looking at the ring where I left it. It looked smaller somehow. Less important. Just an object. But I knew that wasn't true. Because it had already changed something. I picked it up, turned it slowly between my fingers. Tracing the same faint scratches I had noticed weeks ago. Only now, they meant something completely different. They weren't random. They were evidence. Proof of something that existed before me. And the more I thought about it, the clearer one thing became. This wasn't about the ring anymore. It was about the decision. He knew. From the moment he gave it to me, he knew exactly where it came from. What it had been meant for. And he chose not to tell me. Not because he forgot. Not because it slipped his mind. But because, to him, it didn't matter. I sat on the edge of the bed, the ring still in my hand, and for the first time since I found the phone, I felt something shift inside me. Not confusion. Not even anger. Something quieter. Heavier. Like the beginning of a decision. I just didn't know which way it was going yet. I didn't plan the conversation. I wish I could say I waited for the perfect moment, or that I thought through what I was going to say, but I didn't. It just happened. It was a Sunday. Nothing special about it. No tension leading up to it, no argument, no trigger. Just one of those slow days where everything feels too quiet. Logan was in the living room, laptop open, going through something work-related even though he didn't have to. He always did that. Filled empty time with something structured. I was standing in the doorway for a minute before he noticed me. "Hey," he said, glancing up. "You okay?" I nodded at first. Then I walked in and sat across from him. Not next to him. Across. He noticed that too. "You sure?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to see the version of him I thought I married. I was trying to see what I had missed. "What was her name?" I asked. His expression changed instantly. Not dramatically. Not in a way anyone else would notice. But I did. Because I had been watching him for days. "Who?" he said. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't aggressive. It was careful. I held his gaze. "The woman you were engaged to." There was a pause. A long one. He leaned back slightly, like he needed space to think. "How do you know about that?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and placed it on the table between us. Then I opened the photo. The one with her hand. The ring. I turned the screen toward him. He didn't pick it up. He just looked at it. And then I saw it. Recognition. Not shock. Not panic. Just recognition. Like he knew exactly what he was looking at. He exhaled slowly and leaned back further into the couch. For a second, neither of us said anything. The silence felt heavier than anything we could have said. "You went through my things," he said finally. It wasn't an accusation. Just a statement. "Yes," I said. Another pause. "I found the phone," I added. "I saw the photos." He nodded once. Like that explained everything. And somehow that made it worse. Because he wasn't trying to deny it. He wasn't even trying to soften it. He was just accepting that I knew. "I was going to tell you," he said after a moment. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it felt so predictable. "When?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. He looked down at his hands, then back up at me. "I don't know," he said. Eventually. Eventually. That word just sat there between us. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms without thinking. "You gave me her ring," I said. It came out calmer than I expected. He didn't flinch. "It's not hers anymore," he replied. That was the first moment I felt something sharper push through everything else. Not anger exactly, but something close. "It was," I said. "It was meant for her." He sighed. "Yeah," he said. "It was." And that was it. No apology. No explanation. Just agreement. I stared at him for a second, trying to understand how he could say that so easily. "Why?" I asked. That seemed to catch him off guard more than anything else. "Why what? Why would you give that to me?" I said. "Why not just get a new ring?" He hesitated. Actually hesitated. And I could tell he was trying to figure out how to explain something that, to him, probably made complete sense. "I already had it," he said finally. I blinked. "That's your answer?" "It's not just that," he added quickly. It meant something." I felt something tighten in my chest. "It meant something to you and her," I said. He shook his head. "No," he said. "It meant something to me." There was a difference in the way he said that. Subtle, but there. Like he genuinely believed it. It was a commitment, he continued. It was something real. Just because it didn't work out doesn't mean that part wasn't real. I stared at him, trying to follow the logic. "So you just carried that over?" I asked. "Like it didn't matter who it was for?" "That's not what I'm saying." "Then what are you saying?" I pressed. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. "I'm saying the meaning didn't change," he said. "The intention didn't change. But the person did," I said. He paused. And, for a second, I thought maybe that would be the moment something clicked for him. But it didn't. "I didn't think it mattered," he said. There it was. Simple. Direct. Honest. And somehow, that was the worst part of all of it. I let out a small breath, looking away for a second. "You didn't think it mattered," I repeated. "No," he said. "It's just a ring." I laughed then. A short, quiet sound that didn't feel like it belonged to me. "It's not just a ring," I said. "It is," he replied. "You're the one who gave it meaning." That stopped me. Because I didn't know how to respond to that. On some level, I understood what he was trying to say. Objects don't carry meaning on their own. People give them meaning. But that wasn't the point. You made that decision for both of us, I said slowly. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? You decided it didn't matter, I said. Without asking me if it would. He didn't answer right away. And for the first time, I saw something close to uncertainty in his expression. I didn't think it would be a big deal, he said. I nodded. I know, I replied. And that was the problem. Because to him, it wasn't. To him, it was practical, logical, efficient. He had something that still worked. So he used it. No wasted money. No unnecessary replacement. It made sense. But to me, it didn't feel like practicality. It felt like I had stepped into something that wasn't meant for me. Like I was wearing a promise that had already been given once before. I looked at him again. Really looked at him. And I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit until that moment. He wasn't hiding anything now. He wasn't lying. He was telling me exactly how he saw it. And that meant this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a difference. A fundamental one. I wish you had told me, I said quietly. He nodded. Yeah, he said. I probably should have. Probably. Another word that didn't sit right. But I didn't think it would change anything, he added. I held his gaze for a second longer. It did, I said. And I don't think he fully understood how much. After that conversation, nothing exploded. No yelling. No doors slammed. No dramatic, I'm leaving moment. If anything, everything got quieter. Too quiet. Logan went back to his laptop like the conversation had just been another problem to process. Something discussed, understood, filed away. I stayed sitting there a little longer, staring at the table, replaying everything he said. I didn't think it mattered. That line stayed with me more than anything else. Not because it was cruel, but because it wasn't. It was honest. And that honesty made it harder to argue with, because he wasn't trying to hurt me. He genuinely believed what he did made sense. Which meant this wasn't about fixing a mistake. It was about whether I could live with the way he saw things. That night, I didn't bring it up again. We moved through the evening like we always did. Dinner, a few small conversations, the TV on in the background. Normal. But the normal felt thinner. Like it was just a layer over something that had already shifted. I still didn't put the ring back on. It stayed on the nightstand, exactly where I left it. Logan didn't mention it again either. And that was something I kept noticing. He wasn't trying to convince me to wear it. He wasn't apologizing or offering to replace it. He had already explained himself. To him, that was enough. A few days passed like that. Then a week. Life kept moving. Work deadlines came and went. Groceries needed to be bought. Laundry piled up and got done. From the outside, nothing had changed. But inside, something had. I started noticing the small gaps. The way he made decisions without asking, even about simple things. What we were doing on the weekend. What time we'd leave. Where we'd go. They weren't big decisions. But they followed the same pattern. He assumed. And I adjusted. I hadn't thought much of it before. Now I couldn't unsee it. It wasn't controlling. It was just automatic. Like he believed his way of thinking was the default. And that worked, as long as I agreed. The ring just made it visible. One night, I found myself sitting on the edge of the bed again, holding it in my hand. Turning it slowly, the same way I had weeks ago. Only now, I wasn't looking for scratches. I was thinking about what it meant to put it back on. Because I could. That was the thing. Nothing was physically stopping me. The ring still fit. It still looked the same. To anyone else, it would still mean the same thing. But I knew. And that changed everything. I thought about what he said. It's just a ring. Maybe he was right. Maybe the object itself didn't matter. But the decision behind it did. The fact that he knew its history. That he chose not to tell me. That he decided, on his own, that it wasn't important enough to share. That was the part one couldn't move past. I walked out into the living room, still holding it. Logan was on the couch, scrolling through something on his phone. He looked up when he saw me. You okay? He asked. I nodded slightly and sat down across from him again. Same position as before. I placed the ring on the table between us. Not dramatically. Just, there. I don't think I can wear this again, I said. He looked at it, then back at me. There was no surprise in his expression. Just a kind of quiet acceptance. Okay, he said. And for a second, that answer almost frustrated me. Not because it was wrong, but because it was so easy. That's it? I asked. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? You're just okay with it? I said. You're not going to say anything else? He leaned back a little, thinking. I already told you how I see it, he said. I don't want to argue about it. I let out a small breath. I'm not trying to argue, I said. I'm trying to understand how you thought this wouldn't matter to me. He looked at me for a moment. I guess I didn't think about it that way, he said. And again, it was honest. No excuses. No deflection. Just a gap. A gap in perspective that I didn't know how to bridge. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I said. I know. We sat there in silence for a bit. The ring still between us. It felt strange, seeing it like that. Not on my finger. Not part of me. Just an object. After a while, he picked it up and turned it once in his hand. You want me to get you a new one? He asked. The question hung there for a second. Because part of me wanted to say yes. Wanted something clean. Something that didn't carry anything from before. But another part of me knew it wouldn't fix what I was feeling. Because it wasn't about replacing the ring. It was about what had already happened. No, I said quietly. He nodded, like he expected that answer. Okay. He set it back down. And that was it. No big resolution. No clear answer. Just acceptance. It's been a few months since that conversation. We're still together. Which I know some people wouldn't understand. And maybe I don't fully understand it either. Nothing else in our relationship fell apart. We still talk. Still eat dinner together. Still move through the same routines. But something underneath it is different. Quieter. More distant in a way I can't fully explain. I still don't wear the ring. It stays in a drawer now. Not hidden. Just not used. And sometimes I catch myself looking at my hand, noticing the empty space, and wondering what it actually represents now. Not just the marriage, but the choice. Because that's what it comes back to for me. He made a choice. Not a malicious one. Not one meant to hurt me. But one that didn't include me. And I'm still trying to figure out what that means for everything else. So I guess that's where I am now. Nothing dramatic. Nothing broken in a way you can point to. Just changed. And I don't know if that's something that fades over time. Or something that quietly stays. So I have to ask. Am I holding on to something that shouldn't matter? Or is this the kind of thing that actually says more about a relationship than I want to admit?